When my boys were very little, they would sometimes experience what my wife and I would refer to as a meltdown. There were various reasons for these emotional collapses, but invariably it would end with one of them on the ground in a puddle of tears, completely unable to carry on. Life had simply become too much for them. And in the first reading today, we see the prophet Elijah essentially having an adult version of a meltdown. "This is enough, O Lord," he says, "take my life." I would like to pause here and briefly set the stage for you as to why he may have been experiencing a meltdown alone and in the middle of the wilderness. The chapter immediately prior to this one recounts how Elijah confronts the 450 prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, and before all of Israel he issues this challenge: "If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." And in an epic showdown between the lone prophet of God and the 450 prophets of Baal, Elijah calls down fire from heaven to consume his sacrifice, and then commands the people of Israel to seize the prophets of Baal and take them to the dry valley below, where he kills them all. It is an incredible triumph for Elijah over the prophets of Baal. He then prays to the Lord to relieve the drought which had been plaguing the land for 3 years, and God sends rain. And then, empowered by the hand of the Lord, Elijah girds up his loins and runs in front of the king's chariot all the way to Jezreel. It was a very eventful day for the prophet of the Lord. And then we come to the 2 verses immediately prior to our first reading today, and we read that Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba. And there, under the broom tree, Elijah has a meltdown. "It is enough, O Lord, take my life." I find God's response to Elijah to be fascinating. Elijah sleeps and is awakened by an angel of the Lord who gives him food for the journey. Then he lays down and sleeps again, and is once again awakened by an angel of the Lord saying, "Get up and eat, else the journey will be too long for you." At this point, I would like to draw your attention to something my wife and I discovered when our boys were still little and still prone to meltdowns. It is amazing what a nap and a snack can do for you when life seems entirely too overwhelming. And this is exactly what God as a loving Father provides for his prophet Elijah. Rest and nourishment, a hearth cake brought by a heavenly messenger, food for the journey, bread from heaven. In our own situations, we might sometimes find ourselves completely overwhelmed by all that life has to throw at us. We may suddenly find ourselves alone and fatigued, spiritually famished, and in the midst of our exhaustion and malnourishment, Christ appears to us and says, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world." Elijah is given bread from heaven to strengthen him for the journey. According to the Council of Trent, in the same fashion, our Lord gives us super substantial bread for our pilgrimage, that being invigorated by the strength thereof, they may, after the journey of this miserable pilgrimage, be able to arrive at their heavenly country, there to eat without any veil the same bread of angels which they now eat under the sacred veils. St. Maximilian Kolbe, whose feast we celebrate on the 14th, once noted that if angels could be jealous of men, they would be so for one reason: Holy Communion. Let us therefore come together to the table of the Lord, in order that we might receive our food for the journey, the bread from heaven, Christ himself.